Imagine a man who once commanded the respect of a nation, a naval hero who flew helicopters in the heat of the Falklands War, acting as a human decoy to divert missiles away from British ships. A man whose bravery was unquestioned and whose future seemed paved with royal duty and public adoration. Now, picture that same man reduced to a life of forced seclusion, reportedly gorging himself on chocolates while the walls of his 30-room royal residence close in around him. This is the staggering, almost Shakespearean fall from grace of Prince Andrew, the Duke of York. He was once whispered to be Queen Elizabeth II's favorite son, the golden boy of the House of Windsor, but he now finds himself a shadow of the royal he once was, trapped in a cycle of isolation, sedentary habits, and a deep-seated resentment that has many royal observers concerned for his very well-being. Hello, dear viewers, and thank you for joining us for this extensive, deep-dive investigation into one of the most complex, troubling, and polarizing chapters in the modern history of the British royal family. Today, we are looking closely at the latest, increasingly dire reports surrounding Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. This is a man whose name has become inextricably linked with international scandal, and whose current lifestyle is being described by those close to the palace as a psychological and physical battleground. Before we proceed with this detailed investigation into the Duke's current state of affairs, I would like to invite you to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell. Your support is what allows us to continue bringing you these in-depth, long-form reports on the stories that shape our world and the figures who inhabit the highest, most guarded echelons of society. The story of Prince Andrew's decline is not merely a tale of personal misfortune or a string of bad luck. It is a sprawling narrative woven with threads of international intrigue, high-level legal battles, and a public relations disaster of unprecedented proportions. For decades, the Duke of York was a fixture in the media eye, the dashing pilot, the trade envoy, the representative of the crown. But in recent years, his presence in the headlines has been for all the wrong reasons. The catalyst for his current predicament, as many of you are well aware, is his long-standing and deeply controversial connection to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. While the world has known of this association since at least 2011, the intensity of the scrutiny has only increased as new details have emerged, painting a picture of a man entangled in a web that he has found impossible to escape, no matter how many legal teams or PR experts he employs. A significant and perhaps final turning point in this saga was the decision by the Trump administration and the subsequent judicial orders to release the so-called Epstein files. These documents, which were once shielded from public view by layers of legal protection and confidentiality agreements, contained a treasure trove of information. We are talking about thousands of pages of depositions, emails, photographs, and the infamous flight logs of Epstein's private jet, the Lolita Express. These logs placed many of the world's most powerful individuals in Epstein's orbit, traveling to his private island, Little St. James, and his various luxury properties around the globe. Among these names were high-profile politicians, billionaires, and, most damagingly for the British monarchy, Prince Andrew himself. The release of these files acted as a massive gasoline pour on an already smoldering fire. It provided visual and documentary evidence that the public simply could not ignore. It wasn't just about rumors or he said, she said anymore. It was about flight manifests and witness statements that showed the Duke's presence in places and with people that were fundamentally incompatible with his royal duties and the moral standing expected of a prince of the realm. Furthermore, the account of Virginia Giuffre, formerly known as Virginia Roberts, has remained the central, immovable pillar of the allegations against the Duke. Her memoir, Nobody's Girl, provided a harrowing and incredibly detailed narrative of her experiences within Epstein's predatory circle. Her specific claims that she was trafficked to the prince on 3 separate occasions in London, New York, and the U.S. Virgin Islands led to a high-profile civil lawsuit in the United States. This legal battle threatened to drag the royal family through a public trial that would have been catastrophic for the monarchy's reputation. Ultimately, the Duke settled the case out of court for an undisclosed sum, rumored to be in the millions of pounds. While the settlement involved no admission of liability or guilt on the Duke's part, the damage to his reputation was, for all intents and purposes, total and irreversible. In the court of public opinion, the settlement was seen as a desperate move to avoid cross-examination. Consequently, he was stripped of his military titles, his royal patronages, and his ability to use the His Royal Highness style in any official capacity. He became, in essence, a royal in name only, a man without a role, without a uniform, and without a purpose in a family that is defined by the very things he lost: service and public visibility. Now, a new and deeply concerning report by Radar Online has shed a harsh light on the grim reality of Andrew's life behind the high, guarded gates of the Royal Lodge in Windsor. According to this report, which cites multiple sources close to the royal household, the Duke has completely let himself go. The physical and social isolation that began as a necessity has now become his daily, suffocating reality. The report paints a picture of a man who is psychologically embattled, struggling to come to terms with the absolute loss of his status and the total collapse of the world he once dominated. One source described him as a shadow of the royal he once was, suggesting that the confident, boisterous, and sometimes perceived as arrogant persona of the past has been replaced by someone who is retreating further and further into a shell of his own making. Perhaps most shocking to the public are the details regarding his daily habits and physical health. The report alleges that Andrew has been gorging himself half to death on chocolates, a behavior that psychologists often point to as a classic sign of emotional distress, clinical depression, or a desperate coping mechanism for profound loneliness and a lack of external stimulation. His days are described as 100% sedentary. Think about that for a moment. For a man who was a trained athlete, a naval officer, and a frequent traveler, his life has shrunk to the size of a few rooms. Instead of official engagements, state dinners, and international trade missions, his time is now reportedly filled with endless hours of television, occasional rounds of golf on the private courses of the Windsor estate, and shooting. Activities that he can perform within the confines of the royal grounds, shielded from the prying eyes and the inevitable judgment of a public that has largely turned its back on him. This sedentary lifestyle is a significant concern, not just for his immediate physical health, given the risks of heart disease and diabetes associated with sudden inactivity and poor diet, but as a screaming indicator of his mental state. For a man who was once at the center of the action, the transition to a life of enforced leisure and social pariahdom must be excruciating. A separate insider has come forward to provide further context, stating that Andrew feels isolated and resentful. He's grappling with the reality of having lost his status, his role in the family, and much of his sense of purpose. This loss of purpose is perhaps the most devastating blow of all. In the British royal family, one's identity is not just about who you are, but what you do. It is inextricably linked to one's work, one's patronages, and one's service to the crown. Without that, Andrew is left in a vacuum, left to wonder who he is and what his place is in a world that seems to have moved on with a mixture of indifference and hostility. The resentment mentioned by the insider is also a key factor that we must analyze. Andrew reportedly feels that he has been unfairly treated, perhaps even thrown under the bus by the institution he served. He reportedly compares his situation to other members of the family or other global public figures who have faced scandals but managed to retain their positions. This sense of grievance can be a toxic emotion, leading to further withdrawal and a stubborn refusal to engage with the reality of his own actions. It creates a self-perpetuating cycle. The isolation feeds the resentment, and the resentment makes the isolation feel like a righteous protest, further distancing him from any chance of reconciliation or rehabilitation. The situation has reached a point where there's a careful watch over him, according to the same report. Officials within the royal household are reportedly ensuring that the Duke is not left alone for long stretches of time. They are keeping a close eye on him because of the immense pressure he's facing. This level of monitoring, essentially a welfare watch, suggests a high degree of concern within the palace for his safety and mental stability. It is a sobering, almost tragic thought that a prince of the United Kingdom, a son of the late Queen, requires what amounts to a suicide watch or a mental health intervention by staff and officials. It is a testament to the depth of the crisis he is currently enduring. To truly understand how Prince Andrew reached this absolute nadir, we must look back at the trajectory of his life and the specific events that led to this spectacular downfall. Born in 1960, the second son of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, Andrew was often seen as the spare, who enjoyed more freedom and less scrutiny than his older brother Charles. He was the dashing young prince, a naval officer who served with genuine distinction during the Falklands War in 1982. When he returned from the war, he was photographed with a rose in his mouth, greeted by a cheering nation. That was an iconic image of the era, cementing his status as a national hero and the favorite son. However, the 1990s brought the first cracks in the facade. There was the high-profile and incredibly messy divorce from Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York. While the two have remained remarkably close over the years, even continuing to live together at the Royal Lodge in a domestic arrangement that baffles many. The scandals of that era, including the infamous toe-sucking photos of the Duchess, began to chip away at the Duke's public standing. Yet, none of that compared to the storm that would break years later when his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein became public knowledge. The Duke's judgment was questioned, his choice of associates was mocked, and his perceived arrogance began to grate on the public. The Duke's attempt to clear his name in the now infamous November 2019 BBC Newsnight interview with Emily Maitlis is widely regarded by PR experts as one of the greatest self-inflicted disasters in television history. It was supposed to be his redemption moment. Instead of garnering sympathy or providing a credible, humble defense, Andrew appeared out of touch, entitled, and entirely lacking in empathy for Epstein's victims. He offered explanations that were met with immediate and widespread ridicule, most notably his claim that he could not have been sweating at a nightclub because of an adrenaline overdose he suffered during the Falklands War. He also claimed he was at a Pizza Express in Woking, on a night he was accused of being with Giuffre. The interview was intended to put the rumors to rest. Instead, it served as the final nail in the coffin of his public life. It showed a man who lived in a different reality than the rest of the world. Shortly after that interview aired, the Queen, reportedly acting on the firm counsel of then Prince Charles and Prince William, made the difficult and historic decision to move Andrew away from public duties. It was a surgical move designed to protect the institution of the monarchy from the radioactive fallout of his personal associations. But for Andrew, it was the beginning of the end of his identity. He was no longer a working royal, he was a liability to be managed. The transition from the reign of Queen Elizabeth II to that of King Charles III has only exacerbated Andrew's isolation. While the late Queen was known to have a legendary soft spot for her second son, often seen riding with him or inviting him to private family events to show support, King Charles has taken a much firmer, more pragmatic stance. The King's vision for a slimmed-down monarchy, a leaner, more cost-effective, and scandal-free institution, has no place for a disgraced brother who brings nothing but negative headlines and awkward questions about royal funding. This has led to reports of a brewing, bitter conflict over Andrew's residence at the Royal Lodge. The King is reportedly keen for Andrew to move into a smaller, more modest property, such as Frogmore Cottage, the former home of Harry and Meghan, which would be easier to secure and maintain. However, Andrew is said to be digging his heels in, clinging to the 30-room mansion as one of the last vestiges of his former life of grandeur. He reportedly views the house as his castle, and losing it would be the final admission that his life as a senior royal is over. The Royal Lodge itself has become a physical symbol of Andrew's current state. Recent reports suggest the property is falling into a state of visible disrepair. There are stories of damp, peeling paint, and overgrown gardens, as the Duke reportedly struggles to afford the astronomical maintenance costs now that his official funding from the sovereign grant has been cut off. It is a crumbling palace for a crumbling prince, a physical manifestation of a life that is slowly but surely losing its luster and its structural integrity. The image of the Duke sitting in a vast, decaying house, eating chocolates and watching television, while the roof literally and figuratively leaks around him, is a powerful and tragic one. The psychological toll of this fall cannot be overstated. For a man who was raised from birth with the utmost privilege, who was told he was special, important, and above the common fray, the reality of being a social pariah must be a profound, soul-crushing shock to the system. The careful watch mentioned by insiders suggests that the royal establishment is well aware of the risks involved when a person's entire world collapses so publicly and so completely. There is a fear, perhaps, that the immense pressure could lead to a breaking point, a crisis of mental health that the palace is desperate to avoid. This pressure is not just coming from the media or the public, it is also deeply internal. The loss of his military titles in particular is said to have been the most devastating blow for Andrew. His service in the Navy was a point of genuine earned pride. It was a time when he was judged on his merits, his bravery, and his skill as a pilot rather than just his title. To have those honors stripped away by his own mother was a rejection of his most significant contribution to his country. It left him with a void that no amount of comfort food or daytime television can fill. It was a symbolic, dishonorable discharge from the family business. The inclusion of his name in the Epstein files released during the Trump administration and thereafter added another layer of permanence to his disgrace. It ensured that the story would not simply fade away with the passing of the news cycle. Every time a new set of documents is unsealed, or a new survivor comes forward, or a new documentary is released, the Duke is dragged back into the harsh spotlight, forced to relive the most shameful chapters of his life. The release of the files was a moment of transparency that the Duke and his legal team likely never anticipated would be so thorough, and it has made the task of rehabilitating his image nearly impossible. How do you rebrand a man whose name is on a flight log to a pedophile island? Moreover, the presence of other high-profile names in those files, such as former President Bill Clinton or various tech moguls, provides a context of power and influence that makes the allegations feel even more sordid to the general public. It suggests a shadow world where the global elite believed they were entirely above the law, a world that the public is no longer willing to tolerate or excuse. Andrew, as a prominent member of the British royal family, became the most visible, most vulnerable symbol of this perceived arrogance and lack of accountability. He became the face of the Epstein orbit in a way that few others have. The reports of his 100% sedentary lifestyle also point to a total lack of engagement with the outside world. Golf and shooting are solitary or small group activities that allow him to remain within a very tight, controlled, and subservient circle of friends and staff. This isolation protects him from the immediate, visceral sting of public rejection, the boos, the stares, the uncomfortable questions. But it also prevents any possibility of personal growth, reflection, or redemption. He is stuck in a temporal loop, dwelling on the past, mourning his lost glory, and stewing in the resentment he feels toward the present. The gorging on chocolates detail, while it might seem trivial or even humorous to some tabloids, is a classic clinical indicator of a lack of self-care and a search for immediate, albeit fleeting, neurological comfort. In the context of letting himself go, it suggests a man who has abandoned the discipline, the physical fitness, and the high standards that were once a non-negotiable requirement of his position. It is the behavior of someone who feels they have nothing left to lose and, perhaps more tragically, nothing left to live for in terms of a public or meaningful role. When you are no longer a prince, no longer a pilot, and no longer a patron, who are you? For Andrew, the answer seems to be found in the bottom of a chocolate box. The officials keeping a close eye on him are likely concerned about more than just his weight or his diet. The immense pressure of being the most disliked royal in modern history could manifest in many dangerous ways. The royal household has a duty of care both as an employer and as a family to ensure that he does not come to physical harm. This careful watch is a silent, behind-the-scenes admission that the Duke of York is in a state of acute crisis, a crisis that the family is trying to manage with extreme discretion to avoid further public scandal or a tragic headline. As we look at the situation today, it is objectively hard to see a way back for Prince Andrew. The monarchy is moving forward under King Charles and the Prince of Wales, focusing on themes of modernization, sustainability, empathy, and service. Andrew, with his deep ties to the past and his heavy, dark baggage of scandal, represents everything the new reign is trying to distance itself from. He is a walking, breathing reminder of an era of perceived royal entitlement, lack of oversight, and the old boys club mentality. The question of what happens next for the Duke of York remains one of the most awkward, unanswered questions for the palace. Will he eventually be legally or financially forced out of the royal lodge? Will he continue to live a life of quiet, decaying isolation, a shadow of his former self, until he is forgotten by the public? Or will there be some attempt at a very limited, very private return to the family fold for holiday events? Given the current climate and the strength of public feeling, especially among younger generations who have no memory of his Falklands heroism, any kind of public return seems entirely out of the question. The best he can perhaps hope for is a quiet life of peace, better health, and privacy, far away from the cameras that once adored him, but now only seek to document his decline. But for a man who has lived his entire life in the blinding spotlight of royalty, quiet may be the hardest thing of all to achieve. The resentment he feels, according to insiders, suggests that he is not yet ready to accept his fate. He is still grappling with the reality of his situation, a psychological process that can take years and, in cases of such extreme fall from grace, may never be fully resolved. He is a man mourning the death of his own persona. The story of Prince Andrew is a stark, modern cautionary tale about the perils of unchecked power, the vital importance of personal accountability, and the extreme fragility of a reputation built on status rather than character. It shows that even those born into the highest, most protected levels of society are not immune to the consequences of their choices and their associations. For our audience aged 55 and over, who have watched Andrew grow from a young, charismatic prince into a war hero, and then into a figure of international scandal, this fall is particularly striking. It marks the definitive end of an era and a permanent shift in how the public perceives and judges the royal family. The days of deferential silence are long gone. We must also consider the profound impact this has had on the wider royal family. King Charles, in his first pivotal years as monarch, has had to navigate the incredibly difficult waters of family loyalty versus the existential needs of the institution. His treatment of Andrew, cutting his allowance, requesting he move, is a clear, loud signal that the survival and reputation of the monarchy comes first, even before his own brother. Prince William, too, is said to have been instrumental in the decision to sideline his uncle, showing a steely resolve that will likely define his own future reign. The Andrew problem has been a trial by fire for the new leadership of the House of Windsor, and their response has been one of firm, if painful, separation. The role of the media in this saga also cannot be ignored. Outlets like Radar Online, the investigative journalists at the Miami Herald who originally broke the Epstein story open, and the BBC team that conducted the interview have played a crucial part in bringing these details to light. While some may view the constant reporting as intrusive or tabloid fodder, it is fundamentally the result of a massive public demand for transparency and a refusal to allow powerful figures to hide behind their titles or their palace walls. The Duke of York's current state of isolation is, in many ways, the direct logical result of this relentless global scrutiny. As the Duke continues his sedentary days at Windsor, one cannot help but wonder what goes through his mind as he looks out over the historic grounds of the estate. Does he truly regret his friendship with Epstein, or does he merely regret that it became public? Does he wish he had handled the Newsnight interview with more humility? Or does he truly believe, as the reports of his resentment suggest, that he is a victim of a woke culture and unfair treatment? The tragedy is that a man who cannot or will not acknowledge his own role in his downfall is a man who cannot begin to heal or move forward. The careful watch by officials is perhaps the most telling and human detail of this entire report. It suggests that the situation is no longer just a PR problem to be spun, it is a human problem to be managed. Behind the titles, the medals, and the scandals is a man who is clearly deeply struggling. The royal establishment, for all its cold formality and ancient tradition, is still a family at its core, and they are now faced with the heartbreaking task of caring for a member who has become both a liability and a source of constant, gnawing worry. In the final analysis, the story of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor is one of a spectacular, high-altitude rise and an even more spectacular crashing fall. From the windswept decks of the HMS Invincible to the lonely, chocolate-filled rooms of the Royal Lodge, his journey has been one of the most dramatic and depressing in the long history of the British royals. As he continues to battle his internal demons and the external pressures of his past, the world watches with a complex mix of fascination, pity, and a continued demand for justice and truth. What are your thoughts on this unfolding, tragic situation? Do you feel that Prince Andrew has been treated fairly by the royal family and the media? Or do you believe there is a level of scapegoating happening? The reports of his declining health and psychological state are certainly concerning from a human perspective, but do they change your perspective on the serious allegations against him? We would love to hear your opinions in the comments section below. This is a complex issue with many layers, legal, moral, and personal, and your insights are always valued as we try to make sense of these events. As we wrap up this extensive report, I want to thank you once again for your time and for being an active part of our community. Your engagement is what helps us to continue providing this kind of in-depth, nuanced analysis. If you found this video informative and thought-provoking, please give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might be interested in the ongoing saga of the British royal family. The Duke of York's story is far from over, and we will continue to monitor the situation closely, bringing you the latest updates as they emerge from London and beyond. Whether it's news about his residence at the Royal Lodge, further releases of legal documents from the US, or more insights into his daily life, we will be here to break it down for you with the context you need. Before you go, don't forget to check out our other videos on the monarchy, the transition of power to King Charles, and other global events that define our time. There is so much more to explore together, and we are committed to bringing you the most accurate and engaging content possible. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video. Stay informed, stay curious, and take care of yourselves. The tale of a prince who lost his way is a somber, heavy reminder of the weight of responsibility that comes with a life of public service and high birth. For Prince Andrew, that weight seems to have become structurally unbearable. As the shadow of the royal he once was, he remains a figure of great controversy, a man caught between the memory of a glorious, heroic past and the reality of a very dark, very lonely present. The careful watch continues, and the world remains a witness to one of the most significant and cautionary royal declines in modern memory. The isolation he feels is not just physical, it is a profound separation from the very essence of what it means to be a royal in the 21st century. While his brother and nephew work to secure the future of the crown through transparency and relatability, Andrew remains a prisoner of his past, a past that is documented in the Epstein files and the traumatic memories of those who have come forward to tell their stories. The chocolates and the television are poor, hollow substitutes for the respect and purpose he once held. But in his current reality, they may be the only comforts he has left to cling to. As the sun sets over the ancient trees of Windsor, the Royal Lodge stands as a silent, decaying witness to this ongoing drama. Within its walls, a man once hailed as a hero grapples with a legacy that has been forever, indelibly tarnished. The immense pressure shows no sign of abating, and the psychologically embattled Duke must find a way to navigate a future that looks increasingly bleak and devoid of the light he once took for granted. It is a story that continues to captivate and disturb, a royal tragedy playing out in real time before the eyes of a world that is no longer willing to look away. The details of his sedentary life, the golf, the shooting, the endless TV, paint a picture of a man trying to kill time, in a world where time has become his greatest enemy, a constant reminder of what he has lost. Every day that passes is another day in a self-imposed exile, another day further from the life of meaning he once knew. The resentment he feels is a heavy, corrosive burden, one that may ultimately be his undoing if he cannot find a way to let it go and face the truth of his situation. In the final analysis, Prince Andrew's situation is a reflection of a rapidly changing world. A world where the old rules of royal immunity and the divine right of kings no longer apply, where the truth has a persistent way of coming out, and where the consequences of one's choices are ultimately inescapable no matter how high one's station. The careful watch by officials is a necessary, perhaps even life-saving precaution in a situation that is fraught with psychological risk. It is a sad, quiet state of affairs for a man who was once at the very heart of the British establishment. Thank you for staying with us through this extensive and detailed look at the life and current struggles of Prince Andrew. We hope this report has provided you with a deeper, more empathetic, yet critical understanding of the complexities involved and the human story behind the sensational headlines. Your support and your willingness to engage with these difficult topics are what make this channel possible. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an update on this or other major stories. We have much more to discuss in the coming days, and we want you to be a vital part of that conversation. Until next time, this has been a deep dive into the embattled life of the Duke of York. We wish you all the best and look forward to reading your comments and feedback. Thank you for watching, and goodbye for now. The story of the Duke of York, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, remains one of the most poignant and difficult examples of the fragility of fame and the enduring, sometimes painful power of the truth. As he remains under careful watch, the world continues to wonder what the future holds for the man who was once a prince of the realm, but is now a man alone with his memories, his mistakes, and his resentment. The shadow remains, and the battle for his soul and his legacy continues behind the closed doors of Windsor, away from the light but never truly out of the public mind. We will be here to chronicle every step of that journey, providing the context, the history, and the detail you have come to expect from us. Thank you for your trust and your time. We will see you very soon in our next report. In a world of constant, often chaotic change, the story of the monarchy remains a constant source of global fascination. But as we have seen today, even the most enduring ancient institutions are made up of human beings, with all their flaws, their failings, and their capacity for self-destruction. The story of Prince Andrew is a human story, a royal story, and a cautionary story for our times. Thank you for joining us as we explored it together. The Duke's reliance on chocolates and a 100% sedentary life is more than just a health concern. It is a signal of a man who has lost his vital connection to the world and to himself. The careful watch is a lifeline, a way for the institution to protect one of its own even as it publicly distances itself from his actions. It is a delicate, painful balance, one that King Charles and his advisors must manage with the utmost care and sensitivity in the months and years to come. As we conclude, we ask you once again to share your thoughts. The dialogue we have here in the comments is a vital part of what we do. It allows us to see these stories through your eyes. Your perspectives, especially from those who have followed the royal family through the decades, from the coronation of the Queen to the present day, are invaluable. Thank you for being a part of this community. This has been a comprehensive, expanded report on the current state of Prince Andrew, the Duke of York. We hope it has been enlightening, thought-provoking, and has provided you with a clearer picture of the reality behind the palace gates. Thank you for watching, and we will see you again very soon. Stay safe, stay informed, and stay engaged with the world around you. The legacy of Jeffrey Epstein continues to cast a long, dark shadow over many lives, and Prince Andrew is perhaps the most visible, high-profile reminder of that dark chapter in modern history. As he grapples with his isolation and resentment, the world is reminded that the past is never truly gone. It is something we carry with us, and eventually it demands to be reckoned with. It is a reality that the Duke of York must face every single day, under the careful watch of those who remain by his side in the fading grandeur of the Royal Lodge. Thank you for your attention, your support, and your time today. We look forward to bringing you more in-depth reports in the future. Goodbye for now, and thank you for being with us on this journey into the heart of a royal crisis.